Thank you. All right, and new business, the audit report. We have representatives from Graves and Associates CPAs will be here to present the 14-15 district audit report. Mr. Graves.
Hey, good evening again.
Good evening.
Good evening. For those who I didn't get a chance to speak to, thank you for your hospitality and fellowship there. If you look at the first 3 pages of the audit report, this is the end result, again, of what you retained us to do, and that's perform sufficient audit procedures allow us to come back and render this opinion. And we do so at the top of page 2, that in our opinion, nothing came to our attention, either situational or departures from accounting principles, that would warrant a qualification of your report. And that's what you want to hear me come back and report to you, that nothing warranted a qualification. You have to be qualified to issue an unqualified opinion, from a licensing standpoint. Accountants can't talk in plain English here just to confuse you on purpose. So again, an unqualified opinion is the end result. The next section of your audit report is your management's discussion and analysis. And this has been around about 10 or 12 years. It's your opportunity to expand on the basic message that we're bringing on the financial statements themselves. But I'll skip over that since that's your message. And we'll go to page 20. My main observation here is if you disregard the effects of GASB 68, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit, you had about 4.3 months of reserves for the year ended, and that's consistent with the last several years when you've been at 4.5, 4.4. Again, we want to see you at no less than 4 to be in compliance with how DESE rates school districts, that should you have to borrow within the first 4 months of the school year, you can make the distressed school district list, and you sure don't want to do that on a regular basis. So anyway, you're right where you've been being for the last several years, and that's very, very healthy. The next page, on page 21, is the fund statement on operations for the year. This should be very similar to what you see on a month-to-month basis on the district's finances. I'm only going to talk, my percentages are only talking about the first 2 funds, the general fund and the special revenue, because with all you have going on in the debt service fund and the capital projects fund, it throws our numbers off. But for the year ended, you had a tremendously healthy 6% increase in revenue for the year, and a combination of both local and state revenue that brought that in. The year before you were flat, and 2 years ago you're only at 1% increase. So you got a little breathing room this year with more revenue, and at the same time your spending for the year for those 2 funds went up 5%. So you gained a little bit on the bottom line there from that standpoint as well. The year before you had a 3% increase in spending with 0 increase in revenue, and that obviously has got to come out of your fund balance. 2 years ago you're at 1% increase with a 1% increase in spending. So you've really been watching your budget and your overall spending, and you're pretty well keeping it in line over the last 3 years. So you wound up with about an $800,000 increase on the bottom line from those 2 funds for the year. 6% out of the first 6 or 7 districts we've delivered so far this year has been the largest increase in revenue. Everybody's been in 3 or 4% or less in that area. Pages 23 and 24 is your internal service fund on your health insurance, and you wound up with almost $2.9 million in that fund. Again, for your constituents, the district has saved that much money essentially since you went to that self-insurance feature. So you've been able to pocket that nearly $3 million to manage the overall health program for the district. Now, over the last 3 years, though, you have pulled that down about $1.2 million. But again, you, like everyone else, is constantly reviewing and revising your health insurance coverage to stay in line and be as affordable as you possibly can. So again, you have been pulling your balance down, but you still have a real good, healthy balance. Page 25 begins the numerous pages of footnotes to the financial statements, and they're going to have the required disclosures that any audit report is going to have under the various reporting bodies that we have to work under. But page 36 would be probably the first significant footnote, and that's dealing with cash and investments, where you're required to keep your deposits either FDIC insured or covered with pledged collateral, and we found the district to be in compliance with that requirement. You didn't do any new debt issuance this year till after the end of the year, and so we don't need to talk about that. So let's jump to page 44 and talk about property taxes in the footnote there. And you already knew from your assessed valuation before the year that you didn't have any real increase in assessed valuation for the fiscal year. But at the same time, you collected 98% of the possible taxes off of that levy and assessed valuation, down just slightly from 99% the year before. Again, historically, as long as you're in the 96 to 99% collected, you're right where you need to be. Then GASB 68 on page 45 in the next 13 pages, and I won't cover all those pages.
Thank you.
The big message here is GASB 68 was the Governmental Accounting Standards Board's directive to book your unfunded liability for your defined benefit pension plan. And over on the government-wide statement, that was about $20 million in liability that was added for the year. Again, this is what they wanted done and you know, passed the standard. And so you had to go through, well, at least the public school retirement went through quite a bit of an analytical work and passed out a lot of information that Vicki has been working with, and it's been a tremendous project.
Mm-hmm.
And there's probably going to be a lot of aftermath flush out on it as time goes on too, just simply as everybody learns to work with this standard. But basically it will be being updated on an annual basis to you. And you know, the information technically has always been in your footnotes. They just didn't pass it out by school district, obviously. But they took the overall unfunded liability at the entity system level and gave you your share and says put it on your financial statement. So it's just a number that'll be on an ongoing basis. That's what those 18 pages tell you, I think.
Thanks for the brevity.
Yes. And page 64, finally, the change in accounting principle. This is where we came up with all the calculation of the net changes, both in public school retirement and the peers program, and came up with what was booked to restate your beginning fund balance, as well as get the, well, yeah, this is just the restatement, isn't it, Vicki? For those of you who may be interested in such things. But that's a lot quicker version of it than what Vicki and I have had to deal with and staff. But again, it's one of those things, once it's in place, I trust it won't be quite the endeavor in the future, but it will still warrant additional attention. And then again, as I mentioned on page 65, as you know, you issued a few more bonds subsequent to year end, and we always have to mention material subsequent events as they take place. The supplementary information dealing with budgeting, the main message there is we have to review your budgeting procedures as they apply to budgetary chapter 67 of state statutes, and we found you to be in compliance with those requirements. On page 73, we issue a separate opinion on the various items of state compliance that the district has to meet to report back to DESE on. And the main issue there is that we found the district to be in compliance with those various requirements as they dovetail into the schedule of selected statistics that is reported back to DESE. The last section of your audit report deals with federal compliance. The district had nearly $4 million of federal expenditures for the year. And we as auditors have to select certain programs based on federal guidelines on a rolling forward basis and check those programs for internal control and compliance with that particular federal program. And the main thing, and then in the subsequent 2 reports, so the last 4 pages there, is we found the district to be in compliance with those areas, other than the one finding on segregation of duties that virtually everyone gets in their audit report these days, and that just stays in the audit report. There's no repercussions from it. It just has to be identified and reported. That's the body of your audit report. The next part of the reporting package is a communication of audit results. This, again, is an executive summary of the audit process. It hits those key areas, and we report to you. And had there been any material problems, and certainly there were none, they would be reported to you, the board, so you were fully aware of them, and something didn't surprise you after the fact. And then the last item is the management letter, where the only item we have is to restate the segregation of duties issue. And I think, as I've reported to you in the past, used to the auditor could drop out a management letter point once it had been reported to the auditee in the next audit cycle. And a few years back, they changed that and were required to leave those in your management letter. So the auditors will be talking about this to you forever in the future until some standard changes. But again, I like that being in there as I work with boards, and board members come and go, and they know where things stand from the beginning when they hit the floor as a member of the board, and then, you know, something doesn't come up, and you go, well, I think we talked about that 10 years ago or something. It's there memorialized, and you've got it there. That's your 2014-15 audit report.
Very good.
Great.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Graves?
Just a couple of comments. I appreciate the work that you do, and I would certainly want to call attention to Vicki, because you mentioned GASB. There's terms that we throw around all the time with GASB 68. Certainly a difficult slope for us to work through. She's shown great leadership in that, and kudos to her and the staff that she work with. It makes your job easier, I'm sure you would tell us.
Absolutely.
And the board that certainly enacts policies that allow us to trust us with the funds that the community trusts us with, and it's good to hear that we're doing a good job from someone's perspective outside of the district. So thank you, Vicki, for your leadership there.
Very good. Thank you to both then.
I'll make a motion to accept the report and send a big thank you to Vicki.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion carries. Thank you both.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.